You can tell if somebody's poor within 60 seconds of
Oh,
what they say. Tell us about that.
oh man, that video has so much hate, man. I put that out and I was just thinking about a conversation I had earlier that day. And in the conversation, it was like more about complaining about the world, saying that they couldn't afford things, saying they didn't have the time, blaming everyone for their situation. And I was like, man, it's pretty easy to tell. And 60 seconds, I mean, I guess maybe is a rash statement because maybe it takes 3 minutes or 300 seconds, like 5 minutes, and get deep enough. But you just find that like there's a certain language to poverty, and whether it's just poor in spirit, whether it's poor in mind, or whether it's poor in the bank account, typically it's devoid of personal responsibility.
Right.
It's not leading to levels of inspiration. And this isn't to say that if you're wealthy that you only speak inspiring conversations. I mean, I complain sometimes, that happens. I get frustrated. I get disappointed in myself for not being nicer to a customer service person and like have to really manage that sometimes. But ultimately, it's this language that is almost like a Marxist type of language, that comes from a place of like, I want this, I'm owed that, we deserve this. And I'm like, wait, like who's going to produce that? And so it's something that's a fairly easy thing to detect with just a few questions. Like if I'm given one question, I can tell in 60 seconds for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people start complaining about something. Yeah, I think people find money a scarce resource when they start, complaining about, gas prices or something like that. I think that's just really a classic one. It tells me where they're coming from. I mean, it tells me what their mind is occupying.
Right, and if we're not excited about our future, if we're not developing our skill sets, if we're not really engaged in the world of value creation, it's easy to get frustrated about tax. It's easier to get frustrated about inflation. It's easier to get complaining about interest rates or loan rates and all those kind of things. But what I find is the best way to outpace inflation is through skill set. And if we truly invest in ourselves and invest in other people so that we increase our quality of life and our enjoyment of it along the way, we increase all the skill sets that matter. You mentioned that I'm a decent public speaker and that I'm articulate. That comes from going through writing courses and hiring speaking coaches and just getting the reps and doing comedy and the things that will help me to become a more effective communicator. And then it's really about becoming a better cash flow investor. I know that you teach people a lot around, real estate and investing. And that's one of the big three assets in my mind that helps people generate and create cash flow. But most people are trapped in this indoctrination where they set money aside and forget it. They wait for 30 years and hope for the best. They're very one-dimensional of just paying off a loan and then hoping the retirement plan is going to get them there. And that's why they end up in this mindset where they're like, oh, I don't feel in control because the outcome of my income is something that's dictated by the economy and not my own willpower, not my own skill set, not my own value creation. And I think that's why retirement is such a bad and faulty notion. My main statement in life is create the life you don't want to retire from. Now I get it, like in the industrial age, people need to retire because they were being worked to death and they weren't living for very long back then.
A blue collar world back then, yeah.
Right. But in today's world, what if people just invested more time in selecting a career that mattered or had enough faith and took a leap on themselves to start becoming a better investor or start a business or be an entrepreneur where they get upside potential instead of just begging for safety and security, instead of just wanting the entitlement of benefits, instead of just trading time for money. Like that's an industrial age concept that we've watched, whether it's our parents or grandparents go through trading time for money, but we're in a world where that's not required any longer because we do have technology, we do have artificial intelligence, we do have these things that are starting to displace the jobs that no one really wants to do because it beats down the body. And there's a lot of opportunity for those that are willing to grasp it and go for it. But it comes down to one key thing, value creation. And if we're going to be devoid of value creation, it's easy to tell in 60 seconds whether someone's poor because value creation is not part of their concept or their purview.
And value creation is about expanding that upside, and a lot of poverty mindsets just complain about the downside, their expenses, and you can't really do that much about your expenses. You can only lower them so much, and each time you do, you're probably diminishing your quality of life anyway. And really, I think a lot of this mindset of lack, Garrett, comes back to the fact that simply most believe that money itself is a scarce resource. I probably believed that at one time when I was younger. Maybe you did too. And As I like to say, although I wasn't the first person that said it, the only place that you get money is from other people. So most people, which tend to be employees, think their way to increase their income is only if their employer gives them a raise, or maybe if they find a new employer that pays them maybe 10% more or something like that. So they're limiting their upside over there because they think money's a scarce resource because it's got to come from an employer somehow. They're not thinking about, why don't you really expand your upside and start an Amazon business or rent cars through Turo or Airbnb rentals, or what we do here at Get Rich Education, help people with long-term housing rentals. So it just kind of comes back to the fact that, people's mind is closed off and they just simply want to believe that money is a scarce resource.
Yeah, I mean, they're adding to computer screens as we talk about this. There's never been more money in the world than there is today. It's the most money there's ever been. We keep adding it. There's, so much of it out there. But even if they stopped printing it or they stopped adding it to balance sheets, there's an infinite number of times they can exchange hands. So if we use it to buy computers and clothes or food and shelter or entertainment like comedy and concerts, the more times money exchanges hands, the more value is created. It's exchange that facilitates and creates wealth, and the way that we create exchange is serving others, solving problems, and adding value. And here's the deal. We can have two parties do exchange with one another and both end up wealthier. It doesn't need to be a win-lose transaction. As a matter of fact, like when people transact, they agree that what they bought was worth more than their money. Or if they sold it, they agree that the money was worth more than what they sold, otherwise they would have kept it. We don't do equal exchange. I wouldn't give you $1 for $1. Right? There's no reason to exchange, it's equal. Which means if you can provide something more efficiently than I can for myself, I can pay you, which frees up my time to do what I most efficiently and effectively can do. I would, did triathlons because I was an idiot back in the day. Sorry for those triathletes, which is like a lot of work, man. And I don't love swimming. But I remember going to buy a triathlon bike. I just bought like a road bike. And it was a big upgrade from having a Huffy from Walmart. It was like, oh, this is $4,700. This was a while back. But it was carbon fiber. It was like amazing. And I thought, I could never build this. So this $4,700 is actually really cheap because I'm giving him $4,700 to build something that I can then go build something like write a book or do some consulting or do a speech that can inspire someone. And so that exchange was valuable. It's like if you bought Killing Sacred Cows from me, you're saying that it was worth more than $20. I'm saying it's worth less because I already have the knowledge in my head. And so we both can end up wealthier. Unequal exchange is what facilitates wealth. What it lets us do is tap into our best abilities and tap into other people's best abilities, and that exchange ends up growing over time. And the more times money circulates because of goods, services, and experiences, the more output there is. So look at today. Hundreds of years ago, like if you wanted to listen to music, you had to hire a quartet. Now it's free for almost anyone. If you have any device of any sort, if you're willing to listen to a commercial here or there, you can listen to anything that you want for the most part. You don't even have to pay for it. So think about that advancement. If you want to be anywhere in the world, you could be there in almost 24 hours or less. Back in the day, that would have taken, years for that matter. We have so much more wealth because we keep building upon previous wealth, previous ideas. And those blueprints we continue to grow from with new innovation and ingenuity. Therefore, the quality of life for someone that's middle class today is infinitely more than the middle class of hundreds of years ago. The amount of people that are hungry today versus years ago, even though we have more than 8 billion people on the planet, has gone down as a percentage, not up as a percentage. That's because of velocity and exchange. It's because of this notion that money's not scarce and resources have the way to be replenished as long as we're stewards. Now, if we kill too many of them, then they can't replenish, right? But if we manage that properly, you could actually eat the bison, use the skins, do all that kind of stuff, and still have that exist in the future. These people that don't believe in that believe that there's like a finite pie, that if one thing's gone, it's gone forever, not understanding value exchange, reproduction apparently, and basic science either, and again, we can overdo those things and damage an ecosystem. So there is a balance there.
Yeah, that's right. When you talk about value creation, then you're really not talking about a person going out and trying to get their piece of the pie. Really, more accurately, what you're talking about here are ideas for expanding the entire pie.
Expand the pie. Expand your means. You can budget and reduce, but you said it eloquently. You said, hey, there's only so much you can do in reduction of expenses before it just starts infringing and taking away from things that you value in life. There's a finite game there. But at the expansion game, through co-creation, through collaboration instead of through competition, is absolutely an infinite pie that continues to grow as we add more value, as we serve more people, as we solve bigger problems, as we more deeply impact the people that we impact, as we reach more people. These are things that can lead to more dollars. So I have this thing called the value equation. It's our mental capital, ideas, knowledge, wisdom, insights, strategies, and tools, multiplied by our relationship capital, people, networks, organizations, communities, friends, family, mentors, equals our financial capital. So financial capital is a byproduct of our stewardship of our mental and relationship capital, and the bridge between mental and relationship capital is what we call business, or we call investing. So ultimately, money follows value. How do we add more value? Have a better idea, impact more people, more deeply impact the people you currently serve, collaborate and offer more. Like, it's an infinite pie and an infinite game if we play it that way.
You can watch this one next.